don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD, Annabelle, and Melissa.
Hello, guys, and welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD with my wonderful co-host,
me,
Melissa, and we're excited to share some high-level strategies broken down to maybe a beginner level for you today. We have Bernard Reisz. He's a lead strategist and educator over at ReSure Financial, and he's going to take us down some pretty interesting concepts and talk about some stuff that can get pretty high level, but we're going to try to keep it simple for my brain, and then hopefully it resonates with you. Bernard, thanks for coming on our show today, man. We really appreciate your time.
Melissa, JD, thank you for having me on. I love talking real estate. I love talking with real estate brokerages and agencies. So I've been looking forward to this, and I'm ready to roll.
Awesome. And thank you for, so I asked you if you could speak a little bit about 1031s, because I know not just I struggle with that I think it's kind of complicated. And so thank you for talking to our people about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that's interesting and we think valuable.
Yes.
Well, to start off, I'm sure that there's some of our audience who know you already, but for the ones that don't, can you give us a rundown of, what it is you do and how you got started and kind of where you're at now? And we'll just
yes.
go from there.
So really more of a nerd than anything else. So I love nerding out on tax, financial stuff. Any of these kind of things that I look into, I make sure to explore the depth and breadth of it. Folks that probably know me best for the use of retirement accounts for real estate investing, be that qualified retirement plans, SDIRAs, HSAs, ESAs, checkbook control. But in reality, what I love is the interaction between all the different areas of tax. And you'd be perhaps surprised to know that 1031 exchanges even have a place with self-directed retirement accounts. So I just love taking all this stuff and integrating it. And so that's where I'm at. And I'm on a mission to really demonstrate to people that there's a lot of nuance. And when you can pull together the different fragments, you can create great things. In contrast to what you tend to find out there is a super fragmented financial arena. You've got each person has their little silo, and you can kind of fall between the cracks. But if you can pull it all together, the sum can be so much greater than those parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important as you start to get more properties under your belt, and as an investor, you start to really diversify your portfolio. You got to start to consider the risk that you're having, which proper tax planning can help with. You need to hire somebody who does this every day so that you're not the one forced to spend hours and hours reading the tax code and learning. There's professionals out there that do it, and really finding somebody that you trust, I think is super important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the challenge we find that people have is you don't know what you don't know. And it's so easy for folks to represent themselves as experts or as being an advisor. And really they're just there to make a sale of some sort of tax product. And our mission with the new member space is we realize we cannot directly work with every person. And that's not even our goal. It's not realistic or feasible. We want to give people the tools so that they can discern. So when they go out there in their marketplace, they want to choose a CPA, an attorney, an insurance agent, We want to empower them so that they know they'll have the tools to discern they should choose and perhaps who they should not.
So if you're picking somebody to help you with a 1031 exchange, what do you think those base level qualifications are? And maybe what are some of the questions that the person, I guess we need to go into exactly what a 1031 exchange is, but what are we looking to? How do we qualify that person to help us?
Yes. So there is a gap in the 1031 space, a huge gap. And before we discuss what that is, let's talk about the fundamentals of 1031 exchange so we'll have the right context. 1031 exchange obviously is right now it's been politicized because the Biden administration may be taking away some of it, all of it, who knows. I did a very, very comprehensive 4-part series about a year ago on the Biden proposals, and it's still relevant. And one of those is the 1031 exchange stuff. And it bothers me also when folks talk about real estate loopholes, or you hear about Donald Trump, and not to politicize things, but they make it sound as if he was breaking rules and laws. I don't know everything that's gone on there, but most of the stuff that's talked about is totally above board. And that has been the beauty of real estate taxation, is that you don't have to resort to questionable things to get good tax outcomes. 1031 exchanges have been in the tax code since about 1916. And more recently, since it's almost a Starker case, the IRS gave us very detailed regulations exactly how to execute them. So these are not things that people are, shall we say, criminal or fraud or evasive. It's right there. Cost segregation, depreciation, real estate professional. This is totally above board. Now let's talk about what exactly it is, what the premise is. And I'm not going to say that there's no room to question it today, but I want everybody to understand that this is not some sort of loophole being promoted by some shady folks. The beauty of it is totally above board. Now, what is the concept? The concept, if you go back early enough, 1031 exchanges applied to many more asset classes than they do today. Believe it or not, Donald Trump actually took away many of the applications up before Trump tax reform. 1031 exchanges were used for just about any asset class. So if you think about this, let's go back to 1920. I've got a horse. You've got a horse. I want to sell my horse. I want to buy a new horse. We can swap horses, right? Now, that could theoretically be a taxable event because I've gone from my horse may have appreciated in value, and since I bought it, so I bought the horse for $5, and now I'm making a swap with you for your horse based on a $10 valuation. So there's really a $5 capital gain there, right? And capital gain is recognized not only when you exchange for cash. Anytime you sell for cash or a cash equivalent, you may have had $5 of capital gains income right there. So what 1031 exchange says is no, there is no gain, taxable gain recognized. And there are two principles at play. Number one is it doesn't make sense to tax somebody when they don't have the cash to pay, right? Because the sale didn't create cash. So the IRS want to say, all right, I want to tax you. So normally they tax you on income. It's because you got cash income and the IRS accepts cash as payment. So you got $100 in cash. All right, send $30 to the IRS. But if you swapped a horse for a horse, what are you going to send to the IRS? But they're not accepting horses, to my knowledge. So that's it. So administratively, it's not really feasible, and it's not right to impose a burden on somebody. All right, now come up with the cash. So therefore, the tax gain is not recognized. The other principle is that you actually haven't cashed out. So just as if you held that horse and if it appreciated in value, nobody thinks you should pay tax, right? I bought a horse for $5. Today it's worth $25. Nobody would ever suggest, well, I shouldn't say nobody because it has recently been suggested that you should pay taxes on the $20 appreciation. Nobody's suggesting that if you bought a building for $500,000 and now it's worth $2 million, that you should pay tax on the appreciation, right? The only time we say you should pay tax is when you exit, because the exit, we say, all right, now we got the complete picture and you exited this asset, and now taking everything to account, you had a gain. But while you're holding the asset, we don't know the end of the story yet. All right, today it's worth $2 million. Tomorrow it may be worth $0. We can't tax you until we know the end of the story. So the idea is when you swap one horse for the other, it's really one big investment. It's really a continuation. I invest in real estate, and now I'm continuing my investment. And the story, the ending, we don't know the ending yet. So it doesn't make sense to tax you. That's what 1031 exchange began as, just swapping assets. Fast forward about 60 years, we have people doing indirect exchanges. So ironically, most people think about a 1031 exchange today. The first thing to think about is qualified intermediary, right? So for the audience, those that are listening, a qualified intermediary is a way to do an indirect exchange. Because say what happens if we go back, let's use real estate now instead of horses. I've got a property that I want to dispose of. And John has a property they want to dispose of, and Jane's got a property she wants to dispose of, right? But the three of us, I don't want what John has, and John does not want what I have, right? So I want to sell to Jane and buy from John, right? So we can't do a direct swap. Mm-hmm. So can we do a 1031 exchange? Well, it should make sense that you should be able to do it, because in principle, it's the same thing, right? Again, we're going from property to property. Why should I lose this tax benefit because the person that has the property that I want is not the person that I'm selling to? So here we enter the world of three-party exchanges, indirect exchanges, and the IRS provided regulations to do that using a QI. You don't really need a QI, but using a QI is just the clear way to do it, because the IRS has told us exactly how to do it. They've given us very detailed rules. And if you don't use a QI, you can't rely on that safe harbor. And the IRS may look at the transaction and say, we don't like the way you did this.
It's a taxable transaction.
Exactly. So it's not worth playing around with that. You just use a QI, follow the regs, and sleep well. So
what's a QI?
So QI stands for qualified intermediary, not to be confused with the QIs that exist in the world of foreign taxation. And a QI, ironically, people think like maybe there's like a degree, you go somewhere, you get a QI degree, you go to QI license. For the most part, a QI can really be any unrelated third party, can be a qualified intermediary. But realistically, being that you want to execute the transactions correctly, there's an industry where there are kind of professional QIs. Now, QI doesn't mean the IRS certified them, right? You can be a QI, all of us can be QIs, but taxpayers want to work with folks that have the processes and procedures in place that they've done this and they've got the documents down pat. So these are companies that will take title to the assets. Essentially, you assign a contract to them, and they hold on to the sales proceeds while you go through the period of the indirect exchange. So being that we're not swapping directly, right, the IRS has said, all right, we're going to give you a certain window. If you can do this indirectly and you're going to use a QI, so you have a 45-day identification period, 180-day period to close. So when you sell your property, you end up assigning the contract to the QI. The sales proceeds go to the QI. And that's really the major role of the QI, is to ensure that you're never treated as having received the money. Because the moment, if I sell my property and I want to do a 1031 exchange, I can only do an exchange so long as the IRS does not treat me as having received the sales proceeds. So the role of this intermediary is to hold the sales proceeds so that I am not treated as ever having received them. That's the real science. Kind of want to be more scientific. What role does the QI play? To ensure that the IRS does not treat you as having received the money. Because the moment the IRS would treat you as having gotten that money, 1031 exchange can't happen. It can only happen because you are not treated as having received the proceeds from the first transaction, from your sale. And then assuming you don't have receipt, you have the 45 days to identify a replacement property and 180 days to close on that replacement property.
Is that 180 days after the 45 days, or that's 180 days total from sale to sale?
Exactly. Yeah. The two clocks run together. They run concomitantly. So it's not 45 plus 180. And a lot of exchanges fail, right? That means to say you don't manage to close. But again, it's something you almost always want to pursue if you can get it. There are a few cases, this is why, and I'll talk about some of these cases because now that we kind of know the players, right? The QI, now we have the context. We can get back to your question. What are you looking for when you execute a 1031 exchange? What kind of pros? The reality is that most folks that execute a 1031 exchange, it's just the real estate, the property owner, and the QI. Thing is, the QI does not provide advice. They're not set up to provide advice, and they don't want to provide advice. They sell a service. Now, the really high quality ones, and not just high quality from a professional perspective, high quality as a human beings, they're going to tell you when this 1031, you should not be pursuing a 1031 exchange. But there are many, many QIs that knowingly or not knowingly just look the other way. They say, hey, you pay us our fee, right? And then, so they get a fee, and also the money sits in their bank accounts. And so they earn money on your money. And they don't really look out for your best interests. So it's important to have a QI that is both professional, and although they won't give you advice, they may tell you, hey, you need advice here. Or maybe this is not in your best interests. So I'll give you some examples that I've seen. Number one, you cannot 1031. You can only 1031 an asset that's held for investment, right? So you can't 1031 in a flip.
Right.
Right. Now, you can go to QI and they can look the other way and they'll do the paperwork. All right. Yeah. You bought the property on June 1st. You're selling it on June 24th. It's a flip, right? And they're going to say, sure, 1031 exchange, no problem. Here's the paperwork. And they'll let you do that. But if you actually execute the 1031 and claim, say you don't owe any taxes, and you do your tax return correctly, you put on the form, right, in the 8824, you tell the IRS that, hey, I bought the property on June 1st and I sold on June 24th, you're going to get a knock on the door, right? But the QI says, don't look at me. We just do the paperwork. We're not tax advisors, right? But reality, the high quality QIs will tell you, don't do it. The QIs that you want to avoid, just look the other way. Now, so you want a good QI, but the reality is the QIs are not tax experts and not tax advisors. And so you need your own advisor. And you need an advisor for two things. Number one, you really have to be able to calculate the tax value of a 1031 exchange. Sometimes the value is just not there once your entire tax profile is understood, because you may have losses that you can offset. You have to properly calculate your basis in the property. The QI's role is not to do that, and they won't do that. And if they do that, they may even jeopardize their ability to act as a QI. Because remember, a QI has got to be an unrelated party. So you need to know somebody that can run the numbers, the analysis on your own tax profile. And then not all 1031 exchanges are really super clean. And sometimes you need some strategizing. And to strategize, you do have to know the regulations very, very well. You can come up with creative solutions. So in a plain vanilla 1031, all you probably need is a solid QI and a good understanding of your own tax profile. But if it's not truly plain vanilla, you do need a third party that really understands 1031. And most CPAs actually do not have that. Even the CPAs that are real estate focused, they do not know all the regulations and case law surrounding 1031 exchanges. So if you don't have a plain vanilla 1031, you want to have somebody in your corner that knows 1031 exchanges. So to give you another example, again, we use the flip example. How about 1031 defers the recognition of gain, right? You know what else it defers? Recognition of loss, right? So you can have people that can execute a 1031 exchange that would have had a loss on the sale. And now they could have had a loss to offset all sorts of other income, and they kicked the loss down the road. Right. And so again, the QI there didn't say anything, but that's maybe something that you don't expect the QI to know, because they have to know, that's to know your own personal tax calculations. A good QI will try to bring your attention to these things, but you can't possibly expect them to know all your personal tax profile and all the factors at play.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, I never thought about it as kicking the loss down the road. And I guess there could be some positive reasons why you would want to do that. If you expect to sell 3 or 4 properties the following year, then you're going to take a big gain on. I guess you could maybe want to push a property with a loss. I'm sure there's a lot of different things, but that goes into a whole different tax planning, general strategy, not yeah, of course.
Yeah, in this case, though, that I'm talking about specifically, they didn't want to kick the loss down the road. That's not what they wanted, right? They're like, oh, we're selling. They heard of this 1031 exchange thing to defer. They went to QI, executed 1031.
They didn't have any gains to defer.
And but now they have this loss that's just sitting there that they can't use.
Okay. Well, I think that,
wow.
Yeah, mind blowing. There's a ton of information on that. And I guess that just goes to point out to our listeners for sure. And even to me and Melissa that we really need to make sure that we find experts that can help us when making all of those decisions. And it's not just a single person, it's a team. You need a good QI. You also need a good CPA, and you need somebody who's familiar with the 1031 exchange specifically.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we're, to bring it full circle, the challenge that I think investors face. How do you discern anybody, unless you're an expert? I recall an analogy that was shared to me. It was 2 folks that were of very high stature. People that were very highly regarded as just exceptional human beings, exceptional people. They were leaders of communities. And sometimes, the lay people will kind of debate amongst themselves. All right, we have these 2 incredible individuals. Which one of them is greater than the other, right? And so the analogy that was that was the response to that I really loved. Somebody said, "Have you ever this? I heard this going back over 20 years. Twin Towers were still standing then, and this was before 9/11. And the response was that when you're at the base of the Twin Towers and you're looking up, can you tell which of those is taller?" Right? One of the towers was a little taller, right? But when you stand at the base and you look up, you cannot possibly tell, right? In order to discern which is taller, you kind of got to be on the level yourself, right? You got to be up there. You got to at least get up there, maybe not quite as 110 stories up, but you got to move higher up, and then you can get a little closer to the top, and then you can discern which is taller. And so, regarding the that question, which of these 2 individuals was greater, the idea was, we can aspire to be like either of them. When we get up on the level where it starts making a difference, which of those is actually greater, you'll know when you get there. But until then, we can just learn from both of them. But in the tax, to bring this to the tax and financial realm, that's really my objective, is to kind of get people to the level where they are able to discern between which QI is helping you, which isn't, which tax pro is helping you, which seller of financial products is really the one that you should, trust, put your faith in, and perhaps which one should not be inspiring that confidence. Because unless you know something about 1031 exchanges or qualified retirement plans or life insurance or long-term care, you really don't know anything other than what the salesperson is telling you. So that's really what it's about. And hopefully we've been able to illustrate that.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of what you're doing to educate people on those kind of things. That way they can make those good decisions. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you got going on and where people can find out more about you and what you're teaching over there?
Yes. So just launched a membership space. Access is free. Right now I'm doing about every other day. I'm talking about different tax or financial topics, always sharing stories that I think will blow your mind. Real stories, things that may sound great, these are all stories where people came to me and said, Bernard, this tax strategy was proposed to me. Can you just look it over for 15 minutes? And they're ready to pull the trigger. And then I'm like, no. There are like 30 questions here that have been missed. So it's tax strategies, financial products. I'm looking to really get this message out there, because in every space, I want to be able to promote the folks that are putting their clients' interests first. And sometimes the folks that are focused on doing right by people don't make as much noise as the folks that have their emphasis in the wrong place. So I really want to promote that kind of expertise and integrity in the financial space. And I want financial consumers to be savvy, empowered, and educated when they enter the financial marketplace.
Awesome. Absolutely. If people want to find out more about you, get in contact with you, where are we sending them? You want to give your phone number out?
So I'll give you some specific URLs and email addresses and stuff. But really, if they Google my name, they'll find all sorts of content out there. Bernard Reisz, that's Reisz is R-E-I-S-Z, Bernard Reisz, or if they Google ReSure Financial. The membership space is members.resurefinancial.com. The website that we've got that's dedicated to retirement accounts and real estate investing is 401k checkbook.com. If anybody wants to reach me through an email, they can email success@resurefinancial.com.
Awesome. Bernard, we're super excited. I know that's a ton of information. And I know if they get over there, you got, and can you tell just somebody who wanted to look more into the 1031 exchange, can you direct them to your LinkedIn stuff so that they can find that?
Absolutely. It's a whole series of posts. I told you I did it, and there's actually more to come. I just haven't gotten around to it, but that's like, in LinkedIn, I probably got to about 18 posts. The rest's already drafted, actually. I just haven't kind of neglected that. Mm-hmm. So on LinkedIn, if you search using hashtag ReSure Financial, that's ReSure Financial, you'll find my stuff. You can also do a search using self-directed financial. It's not limited to self-directed retirement accounts. What I'm really about is I feel you got to self-direct your total financial world. Of course, you got to work with the right pros, but you're the director.
Right. Absolutely. Awesome. Bernard,
thank you so much.
It's a ton of information, and I'm sure we're going to have some questions, so we'll be reaching back out to you for that. Melissa, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. That was awesome.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, JD.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.